Hello again, my name is Chris Hludzik, and this is the second part in a series explaining the songs behind my releases. Part one was talking about a side project between myself and my good friend Brian Brophy, a project we had called The Latter Day, and an album we released called As We Speak, and I talked about my songs from that project. Today we'll be focusing on my debut release, 2008's Yours in Rock, if you could see that. Now, as I stated in the previous video, I've been writing lyrics since I was a teenager, and by the time I was in my early 20s, I had amassed quite a bit of songs, and I wanted to do something with them. I'd already been in a few bands, I'd done the whole thing, playing shows, doing this, doing that. I worked in the studio for a few years. And after years of helping other people make their music, I wanted to make my own music for once. And originally the title of the album was going to be called Die a Happy Man, because I always told people if I could just make an album of my own songs, I could die a happy man. But then thinking that was maybe a bit too dark of a title for a debut solo album, I opted for something else. And I chose Yours in Rock because whenever I would write emails to people or messages on the internet or something, my sign-off was always Yours in Rock instead of like Yours Truly or Sincerely or whatever. Because, of course, I love rock music. The title also comes partially from a Deep Purple album which was called In Rock, which is one of my favorite albums of theirs. This album has 10 songs on it. It's about 45 minutes long, which is traditional album length, which is what I wanted. And it's a pretty diverse album, but the main sound and theme and style of the album is straightforward hard rock mixed with some pop, with a little bit of some folky and acoustic stuff thrown in for good measure. So not quite as diverse as the previous project, As We Speak by The Latter Day, but still very diverse. The first song of the album is called Live, and the story behind Live was, I really don't know if I've ever told anyone this before, but it was inspired by the drummer from my first band, a guy named Joe Myers. So Joe, if you're watching, hello, and thank you for the inspiration for this. I was in a band called The Pheromones when I was 18, 19 years old, and the Pheromones broke up the summer after I joined. I joined in the spring, and by the summer the band was broken up. And the drummer, Joe Myers, had said, man, I'd still like to do something with you. I'd still like to do a band with you or something. Would you be interested? And I said, yeah, sure. Because, I was devastated. The first band I was in broke up. It's like losing your first girlfriend or something. It's like you're heartbroken and you think you can't go on. Of course you do. Life goes on and you get bigger and better things, but you don't know that at the time. So we had hung out the weekend after our band played its last show, and we talked about it, whatever. Then a few weeks later, we went down to our practice space, and he brought his girlfriend with him, and his girlfriend was a bass player in another band called Acquired Taste. And Joe and her were jamming that day, and then they were discussing the possibility maybe they would do something together. And so all of a sudden, I was out. And as we walked out of the practice space that night, I said to Joe, I said, I was just kind of like, just dumbfounded, because not only had my first band broken up, the first band that I was in broke up, but now a band that I was originally offered to be in, I wasn't going to be in now. And I just sort of was just devastated, and I just sort of, it just sort of came out of my mind. I didn't even think about what I was saying or how I was saying it. I just looked at Joe and I said, well, what do I do now? And he looked at me as straight-faced as could be, and in his typical cool, mellow, laid-back voice, and said, I don't know, man, live. And bingo, there was the idea for the song. And I believe I went home that night and I started writing out the lyrics. Musically, the song was kind of, it was really straightforward, rock-driven, and it's just, just, really simple, basic and just kind of chugs along. And I actually wrote the song on the bass. I came up with the bass line first, then came up with the guitar riff, which is a very unconventional way of writing songs, but that's how I did it. And basically the theme of the song is, you gotta live your own life, you gotta do your own thing, and you can't worry about what other people are doing or what other people want to do, or if they're going to include you in their plans or not, because you don't know if that's going to happen. It's, nothing's guaranteed. The only thing that's guaranteed is that you've got to carry on. That's basically the theme of the song. A lot of people who listened to the song have thought it was about, trying to get a love interest's attention, trying to get them to be with you, or trying to, overcome heartbreak or something like that. And that could certainly, the song could certainly mean that to people. I mean, my songs aren't really written from an autobiographical point of view. And even though this song was inspired by something that was autobiographical that happened to me, I didn't write it like that. And I don't write my songs like that, because I like to picture other people being able to play these songs and make them their own. Because to me, that's a good song. A song that I could put myself into, even though I didn't write it and I didn't have anything to do with it. I could still put myself into it. That's a good song. So I wrote Live basically as just sort of an anthem, and the chorus, live or be dead. I mean, what better advice could there be? Because those really your two choices. You live or you die. You sink or you swim. That's it. So, thank you to Joe Myers for the inspiration for that. Next song on the album was a thing called Leave It at Home. And it was a song that I had written just based on my experience of the music scene in the first 4 or 5 years I was really involved in it. And just kind of observing the different types of people and the different types of attitudes. It's about the club scene, it's about the music scene, which of course the two kind of go together. The first set of verses is about the club scene. I don't want to hear any more of your cheap talk. Don't you know that I'm poor enough as it is? And I don't really want to hear any late night stories, because nowadays everybody thinks they're in showbiz. Because when you go to a bar, you go to a club, it seems like everyone is always talking about, what's going to be the next big thing, or what they think is good, or what they think is great. And really, it's just all BS. It's just talk, And the main reason a lot of people go to bars, there's really 2 or 3 reasons people go to a bar or club. They either want to pick up chicks, they want to BS or brag about something to make themselves seem big, or they just want to go and hang out and just relax and just forget about the world and just for an hour or two hang out, have a good time, listen to the band, whatever, have a few drinks, and then go home. I was in the latter of those 3 categories. And unfortunately, a lot of the people I was meeting were in the former of those 3 categories, and I just didn't dig it, And of course, being a musician, you always wind up talking to a lot of music people and, bragging about how great this one is or how good that one is or whatever, and you just get sick of it after a while. And so I wrote a song about it, and it's an angry song, and the riff is kind of fast. It's just I've really never written a song like that kind of start, stop, start kind of thing, So it was really cool. It was a different type of song for me to write, because I was writing just really more basic kind of stuff at that time, and that was a little more like almost heavy metal for me. But it was a cool song. The next song from the album is called Insomnia, which was, I guess, sort of the single from the album. When I released the album, I didn't put out a single, which I don't know if that was a mistake or not. Maybe it wasn't a mistake, because the album probably is one of my best known of all my works, and when I play live, more people recognize songs from that album than from my other one or from my other works that I've done. But, the whole thing when I released Yours in Rock was I just wanted to release an album. I didn't care about singles, I didn't care about radio play or anything like that. I sent out stuff to radio, but not really expecting anything, because I was a nobody and nobody really knew me, and I figured, you know, it's just a shot in the dark. But this song, Insomnia, became somewhat of a hit, I guess you could say. There used to be this radio show called NEPA Rebellion, Northeast PA, NEPA, or NEPA, if you will. And on NEPA Rebellion, there was this guy named Joe Craig, and he was a local musician, and he had this thing called the NEPA 9. Instead of a top 10, he did like a top 9 kind of list. And you would send him an MP3 of your song or whatever, and he would play it on the show or whatever for a couple of weeks. And then if people liked it, they could vote for it in the NEPA top 9. So Insomnia started going into the NEPA top 9. And I think, you know, it entered modestly, like 7 or 8, something like that, towards the bottom of the list. And the highest it got was number 2, which was pretty cool. And then they did a year-end list that year, and it was like the top 20 songs or something like that of the year. And I think I was number 14 or something like that. So really quite unexpected from a song that I, you know, hadn't released as a single and hadn't really pushed as a single. In fact, looking back, if I was going to release a song as a single, it probably would have been Live, because I felt like that song really just encompassed a lot of what I was about at the time and a lot of what the album was about. You know, it was a straightforward rock album, but it told stories too, and I felt like that really summed it up. But Insomnia was just a really great, catchy little pop song, and features great guitar work by Clyde Rosenkrantz, doing a good kind of Beach Boys-esque kind of lead guitar part. And then I had Sarius Cannon, who was in a group at the time called Dealer and Wares, who I was producing and engineering. She sang the harmony vocals in the chorus, and it was just a really great song. Incidentally enough, my wife hates it. I don't know why, she just does, but to each their own, I suppose. But I like the song, I like to play it, it's a lot of fun to play. The next song on the album, the 4th song, is a thing called Negative Space, and it was actually the very first song that I ever recorded. And the version that you hear on the album is the very first version. So, I had originally planned on re-recording it, because the sound quality wasn't that great, because I recorded it on my cassette 4-track recorder, and there was no noise reduction, there was no EQ, anything like that, and it was just a really, really poor quality recording. I thought I could do it better, I've got better equipment now. But I ended up using the original version, remixing it on a new 4-track deck that I had, and EQing it a little bit, making it sound a little nicer. It was an interesting concept when I came up with that song. I was writing a song about friends who really weren't friends, but we couldn't find it in ourselves to kind of kick them out of our lives. And in art class of my senior year of high school, we learned about the concept of negative space, which is like if you have a picture of a circle. The circle itself was the positive space, but then the hole, the middle of the circle, was the negative space. But you learned that the negative space really made up most of the picture. And I kind of thought of that as a really interesting concept, that without the negative space, you really wouldn't have much of a picture, and I really was intrigued by that. And so I decided to call the song Negative Space. And I wrote the song in a very, very weird way. I did the lead guitar part first. I recorded that first. Then I recorded everything over that. Now, if you know anything about audio recording, that is not the way to do it. Because you need something, you need like a bass. You need like a bass track. You need a foundation to lay everything on. And I didn't do that. And I don't know why, but I guess I figured back then, because I didn't know much about music, I didn't know much about recording, I was still learning everything. I figured, well, this is where I wrote the song. You know, this is the first thing I came up with when I wrote the song. I guess that's the best way to start it off, is to record that. And of course, that made the song an incredible pain in the ass to record, but I eventually did record it. I played it live once, and it just went down like a fart in church. Because it's just a very depressing, dirge-like kind of song. The reason I included it on Yours in Rock, though, was because it was one of the first songs I'd ever written. It was the first song I'd ever recorded, and it was important to me in that respect. And as I said, I did plan on re-recording it for Yours in Rock, but I couldn't match the emotion and the intensity of the version that I had originally done, so I figured I would just use that. So that's the story behind Negative Space. The next song is called Friend. It's the 5th song of the album, and it's the last song of the first half of the album. Because when I made this album, I was thinking of it in terms of old school LPs, like there was a side 1 and there was a side 2. So Friend would be the end of side 1. Friend is kind of, I guess, the opposite of Negative Space, because it's a song about a friend that you have in life that doesn't really fulfill you, isn't really a positive influence on you, but you just kind of keep them hanging around for whatever. Except in this song, the protagonist in the song actually does decide to say goodbye to this friend, and the whole song is basically just a diatribe of all the bad stuff the friend does, and at the end just coming to a conclusion like, I don't need you, and I can live without you, and I can get on without you. So it's kind of the positive outcome as opposed to the negative outcome of Negative Space. So it's kind of cool to put those two songs side by side in the album. Have a really cool, juxtaposition there. Friend is one that I still play quite a lot live, and again, that was another song that I wrote the bass line first and then wrote everything else to the bass line. I wrote very interesting ways back then. Certainly, I don't know if I would do stuff like that now, but for whatever reason, back then it was easier for me. And I think it was because in all the bands I've been in, and projects I've been involved with, I played bass. So I was coming at it from a bass player's perspective. And I guess in my mind, it was just, well, I've got to come up with a bass line first. Not really thinking about, well, there's guitar, there's drums, there's this, there's that. But in a way, it was kind of cool to write it off of a different instrument that you wouldn't normally write a song off of. So it definitely gave it a more interesting feel. So that's would be the end of what would have been side 1 if this were a vinyl LP. So starting side 2, or song 6 of the CD, is a song called Sleep Forever. That was a song that I wrote back in 2003. I'd written the song. And I wrote it after having a conversation with this guy I worked with at the time. And we were just talking about our work schedules and how weird they were, how, one day you could be working till late at night, and the next day you have to get up and work really early the next morning, and then, you won't have to work till late at night the next day, and how just threw off your sleep schedule. And I made the comment like, man, I wish I could just get a good night's sleep for once, because this sleep schedule is really, I'm really getting screwed up with this work schedule with my sleep. And he goes, man, I just wish I could sleep forever. And I kind of was taken aback by it. I was like, whoa, And he's like, no, not sleep forever like I want to die, He's like, sleep forever like, I just want to shut myself off from the world for a while. And I thought about that when I went home that day, and I was like, oh, that's a really interesting concept, just shutting yourself off from the world for a while. So I wrote a song about it, Sleep Forever. And of course, every time I played it, a lot of people would think it was a song about suicide or death or something like that. And I would always have to explain this song isn't about suicide, it's not about anyone killing themselves, it's not about dying, it's just about shutting yourself off from the world. And it's a very, very simple chord structure. Which is like in every pop song from the 50s or 60s, it seems. But I came up with that simple chord structure because when I wrote the song, I was really just starting to kind of get the hang of guitar. I originally learned the guitar, but then when I got into bands, I was playing bass, so I kind of lost focus on the guitar and started playing the bass. And then I was just trying to reassimilate myself with the guitar once those bands were over, and I was trying to write my own stuff. So it was simplistic for that reason. And another reason it was simplistic was because it was just a simple sentiment, just kind of wanting to shut yourself off from the world and just get away from it all for a while. So I didn't think it needed anything elaborate. So That's Sleep Forever. The seventh song on the album was a thing called Big Damn Deal, which I sort of written after being inspired by hearing a Pixies song called I've Been Tired, which was from their debut release, which was called Come On Pilgrim, which was a mini album they released back in 1987. And I was listening to a lot of Pixies because my first band, they all loved the Pixies, and I'd never heard the Pixies. And they introduced me to them, and I fell in love with the stuff. And on the song I've Been Tired, Black Francis, the singer, or Frank Black as he's more commonly known now, he talks the lyrics. And I guess there really wasn't anything new looking back at it, because David Byrne from the Talking Heads did it, and a lot of other people have done it. But I just thought it was a really unique way to start off a song. And the song was just the beat and him talking the lyrics, and then the rest of the music came in after it. And I thought that was an interesting way to start off a song. And so I did that for this one. And this song was really kind of an angry song, hard rock song, kind of almost punk in a way. And I had Sarius Cannon again sing backing vocals in the choruses, or pre-choruses if you want to call them that. And just sort of gave the song a really cool edge, having the female and male vocals sing together, which was another thing that the Pixies did. So the song was very inspired by the Pixies. I played it a couple times live, but it's really one of those songs that only works if you have a full band, so I haven't played it too much. But it's a cool song, I enjoy it, and it's just another song about people in your life who aren't all they're cracked up to be. I wrote a lot of songs like that back then. I guess I had a lot of people in my life who weren't what they were cracked up to be. That was Big Damn Deal. Song 8 was a song called What Good, and I actually wrote What Good while the latter day, mine and Brian Brophy's project, was still going on. Because the first album, the album that we did was sort of a diverse collection of rock and folk and pop and blues and this and that. And I think for the second thing we wanted to do, we wanted to go maybe a little bit harder, do a little bit heavier stuff. And he recorded a song of his called One More, and we recorded a song of mine called What Good. And after the latter day dissolved, I had this great song and I didn't know where to put it, and I said, well, I could put it on this album. So, it'd be kind of cool. It's a hard rock song. There's a lot of other hard rock songs in the album, so why not? So the song had a home. Basically, the song is about just kind of looking at our worth in the universe and the worth of our own existence, and kind of seeing, kind of gauging where we're at, or where we think we're at. I'm not really a very religious person, I do believe there is, some sort of higher power out there, either watching over us or governing us, whatever way you want to look at it. But I never really got all the people who just, they could put their faith in things like that just so willingly and so freely and not really think about it. And really all you have to look forward to at the end of your life is, you don't know what you have to look forward to at the end of your life. We don't know if there's an afterlife. We don't know if there's a heaven or a hell. For all we know, we could just end up getting thrown on the ground and that's it. And that's why I say in the first line of the song, if life were so simple that a rock preserved your name, would you bother with the struggle to stake your worldly claim? Because really, we work so hard and we try so hard to make a name for ourselves in the world, but at the end, is it really going to be worth it? And that's sort of what the song's about. It just sort of evaluates that. The 9th song on the album is called Grain of Sand, and it was originally titled Grain of Salt, Grain of Sand. And the reason I titled it that was because my late grandmother, on my mother's side, she always told me, take things with a grain of salt. And I never really understood that till I got older. And I sort of wanted to name that in kind of tribute to her. But I thought grain of salt, but I liked grain of sand because it kind of made it sound like, it was nice, relaxing, picture yourself on a beach or something. And so I ended up just going with Grain of Sand because I liked that. It sounded a lot better. It was just an instrumental, and it was just this open chord thing that I just came up with on the guitar. Let me see if I can play it. So it was just an open chord thing. It was just movable up and down the fretboard, not having to change, formation. And just something I was basically messing around with, and it sounded really cool. And it was back when I was really just starting to write songs and starting to record and stuff on my own. It was basically just an exercise that I did just to record, but it ended up sounding pretty cool. And I recorded an original version of it. It was a lot more funkier, and it was electric. It had this kind of really funky kind of bass line on it. It had like a drum beat in the back, and it sounded okay, but it didn't quite convey the emotion that I wanted to convey, so I decided to just do it acoustic. Instead of doing the funky bass line, have a little more kind of subdued fretless bass line, which I had Lenny Mecca play, who was from the local group Jigsaw Johnny, and at the time he was in a local group called Jugdish. And he's an amazing bass player. And so we did that. And then the part that I had originally played on, I had an electric slide guitar on the demo of it. The part that I originally played on the electric slide guitar, the notes from that, I just played on the piano, and it sounded a lot better. And then I kept the slide guitar, but instead of doing notes, I used these sort of long, droning kind of notes in the background, and it made it sound a lot more ethereal, a lot more open. And it ended up being a really, really cool song, and I really like it, I really enjoy it. And then the 10th and last song on the Yours and Rock album is a thing called All Amped Up. And it's another song that was partially inspired by Joe Myers, my former bandmate. Background on it is, in my senior year of high school, my family moved, so I went to a new high school. And so I was a new kid there, and I had to take in all these new experiences and learn a new school, and meet new people, and knew everything. Everything was new, and it was an exciting time. It was a scary time too. And I don't know if I would have been able to get through it if I didn't make some of the good friends that I made. But the one friend I made was this kid named Joe Myers, and he was new to the school too, and I'll never forget the first day I saw him when he walked in. He looked like something from another planet. He was really tall. He was probably about 6'4", 6'5", maybe. This tall, skinny kid, kind of built. And he had a fro, which was amazing. And he was wearing, flannel shirt, ripped jeans. I mean, he looked like a cross between Kurt Cobain and Jimi Hendrix. And it just amazed me. And I just thought, wow, this guy looks awesome. And when I introduced myself to him, and we started talking, and we both had something in common because we were both new to the school, and we were both learning who everybody was and everything. And we started talking, of course, about music, and I had a very, very big passion for music at the time, even though I didn't play an instrument yet. But he shared that same passion. He actually had played in bands, and he played guitar, and he played drums. He was a really cool guy. I remember hanging out at his house one day, and he had a guitar just laying there. And he's like, "Oh, I don't play it anymore." I was like, "If you want it, I'll sell it to you." He's like, "Give me $50 or something." So it's like an old beat up acoustic guitar, but I gladly ponied up the $50, and then I had an instrument. So it was really cool. It was really exciting. But All Amped Up kind of just relates to that whole time period, really. And the one thing about kids from that area where I moved was they were always so excited. They always seemed like they were on the edge of something, or something big was about to happen. But the sad thing is nothing big ever happened. It was a really boring place to live, and really not a lot went on. And their idea of a good time was, just getting stoned, or sneaking some booze somewhere on the weekend, and getting drunk, or partying, or whatever. That was their idea of a good time. I didn't do any of that stuff, so I was probably even more bored than they were. But I just remember thinking how happy it was in a way that at least they had something to look forward to, but how sad it was in a way that what they had to look forward to was really nothing. So I felt for them, I guess. But the song All Amped Up just kind of talks about that. The first line of the song, did you ever get that feeling from deep down below, glad and excited all over, feel like you're on a roll? And that's how they always felt, but nothing ever happened. And I think their thinking of it was, if they thought that something was going to happen, if they thought that something was exciting, if they thought that something was cool, that it was, or that it would happen. And, I don't really know if that's the way it worked out for them. I don't think it is, but it kept them hanging on. It was basically just, about false hope, really. But All Amped Up has two parts. And the first part of the song is about that feeling of being all amped up and nowhere to go and nothing to do. And the second part was just sort of generalization on that theme, I guess, and just a generalization of the world and how it related to people being all amped up. So sort of like a local perspective of being all amped up, and then the sort of more generalized worldwide perspective of being all amped up. So it was really a different kind of song. But there's a line in the song that goes, so you put down your guitar and down the stairs you go, and then you jump into your car with no special place to go, and you saw the light turn red, but you never even seen that while you were waiting there hungrily, all the time that light was green. That actually happened. I was hanging out at Joe's house one day after school, and he lived with his grandmother at the time, and I guess his grandmother didn't know that he smoked, so he would always sneak upstairs, and he would always put his head out the window and smoke up or whatever. And then we were just up there playing guitar or whatever, and then we were going to go over to another friend of ours' house, and so he put his guitar down, went downstairs, got in the car. He was obviously still feeling the effects of what he had done. And I just remember we were sitting at a light, and the light was never red. It was green the whole time. And he just was kind of sitting there. And I don't know if he was waiting for something, or I don't know if maybe he saw something up ahead that I didn't see and he was waiting to go or something. And I said, Joe, the light's green. Go, man. And he was like, oh. And then he went. And I just sort of thought that was kind of funny because, to be in that kind of state of mind, I found very interesting at the time. And the funny thing was, even if he wasn't high, I think he still would have probably been like that. Because, like I said, those kids were always so preoccupied with thinking about what was next or what was to come or what could be that, I don't think anything could have stopped that. So that was a very interesting little personal part to that story. But All Amped Up is a very simple song, a song in the key of C. It's a very kind of Dylan-esque song, kind of Ian Hunter-esque. Very simple chords, but, again, it was just about telling a story and conveying an emotion, and that was really what a lot of the stuff on Yours in Rock was about. Just about telling a story. So, that was the Yours in Rock album rundown. And I hope you really enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed talking about it. And if I seem to ramble on these videos a little bit, I'm sorry, but I don't have a script or anything. I'm going from memory, so if I ramble a bit, or if I seem to stutter or stammer on, I apologize. But again, I'm doing these videos just to kind of give you guys an insight on my music. If you want to hear any of the songs from Yours in Rock, you can look on my YouTube page, and I have in my live performances playlist, you can find various songs from Yours in Rock played throughout the years at various live shows that I've done. You can also hear a few songs on my SoundCloud page, which is soundcloud.com/Chris Hludzik. And there's also a taster track of the album, which features some snippets of some of the songs from the album. So the album was originally available on iTunes back in 2008 to about 2011 or something like that. And I took it off because it really wasn't selling, and it was costing me quite a bit of money to keep it on there. And to be honest, most of the copies that I was selling of Yours in Rock were these CDs that I printed up and burned myself at home. So I didn't really see a purpose in continuing to pay for the privilege of having it on iTunes for it to just sit there when this is the way most people seem to want it anyway. So if anyone wants a copy of Yours in Rock, please go to my Facebook page, facebook.com/Chris Hludzik, and join my page, like my page, and send me a message, and I can send you details on how to get yourself a copy of Yours in Rock, my debut album from 2008. So thank you very much, and until next time, I'm Chris Hludzik, and please stick around for the next video where I'll be talking about my second solo release, which was called Dissonance Meets Harmony. Until then, thanks a lot. Good night.